Imagine waking up not to the sound of an alarm clock or the gentle rustle of wind in the trees, but to the mechanical screaming of chainsaws ripping through the one thing standing between your family and financial ruin. That was my Friday morning, the air outside my window thick with the smell of diesel and the sap of dying trees. I looked out, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, and saw my entire future, 2,000 mature Fraser firs, my late wife's legacy, my daughter's college tuition, being harvested, bundled, and stolen in broad daylight. The ground, still frosted with December ice, was being scarred by the heavy treads of commercial trucks that had no business being on my land, while a woman I'd come to know as the devil in tennis whites stood by the gate, watching the destruction with a smug, satisfied smile. Zip-tied to my fence was a note, a piece of paper that dripped with legal malice, claiming this was a commercial inventory seizure, authorized under agricultural lien laws, signed by none other than Victoria St. James, the president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. She was stealing $23,000 worth of trees, stealing the last gift my wife Elena had left us, and she was doing it with a clipboard in her hand and a law enforcement officer standing confused in the driveway. But Victoria made one critical, catastrophic miscalculation. She assumed she was just crushing another broke, disabled veteran who would roll over and die under the weight of her fake paperwork. She didn't know that my property, the Sterling Pines farm, sat exactly 200 feet outside her jurisdiction. And she definitely didn't know that hidden in the branches of those trees were 4K cameras capturing every single second of her grand larceny. She thought she was running a business. What she was actually doing was starring in her own federal indictment. I'm Caleb Sterling, a 52-year-old retired Army sergeant with a bad back and a protective streak a mile wide. And this is the story of how a suburban tyrant tried to steal my Christmas and how I made sure she lost absolutely everything. To understand why this felt like a knife to the gut, you have to understand where we started, because 18 months ago, my life imploded when I lost Elena to pancreatic cancer. The medical bills didn't just pile up, they buried us, leaving me and my twin girls, Lily and Ava, drowning in grief and debt. But Elena, bless her heart, had a small life insurance policy, and she made me promise to use it to build something real, something that would give the girls a future. I took every dime of that $85,000 and bought 40 acres of neglected land just outside the Hollow Creek County line. It was overgrown and wild, but it had these beautiful, mature Christmas trees that just needed love. Walking those rows, smelling the pine and the mountain air, it was the first time since the funeral that I felt like I could breathe again. I measured the property lines myself, checked the deeds 3 times. I was completely independent, fully legal, and totally free from the tyranny of the Oakwood Estates HOA that bordered my land. Or so I thought. Then came Victoria. She rolled up to my fence about 3 days after I signed the deed, driving a pristine white SUV that cost more than my house, looking like she'd just stepped out of a country club brochure. Perfect hair, expensive jewelry, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She introduced herself as the community liaison for the area, but I quickly learned she was running a racket that would make the mafia blush. See, Victoria wasn't just a busybody. She was a Christmas tree broker. Her scheme was brilliant and predatory. She took pre-orders from the wealthy families in her gated community, charging them a premium, $150 to $200 a tree, promising them exclusive, locally sourced furs. She'd collect massive deposits, about $90,000 a year, and then she'd scramble to find farmers desperate enough to sell to her for pennies on the dollar. But in 2024, her usual suppliers had sold out to developers, and Victoria was sitting on nearly $200,000 worth of orders with zero inventory. She was desperate, and desperation makes people dangerous. "Caleb, darling," she said that first day, her voice dripping with fake southern sweetness that smelled like expensive perfume and condescension. "I have a proposition. You cut. I sell. We split 60/40ths. I have the clientele. You have the labor. It's a win-win." I looked at her. Then I looked at my girls, Lily and Ava, who were already planning to set up a hot cocoa stand and sell the trees directly to families for a fair price. I told Victoria no. I told her I wanted to keep it simple, honest, and direct. The mask slipped instantly. Her eyes went cold, like a shark sensing blood in the water. "You don't understand how things work in Hollow Creek," she snapped, the sweetness replaced by steel. I have contracts to fulfill. I'd hate for you to find out how difficult it is to operate a business without community support. As she drove away, I saw her phone out, snapping pictures of my best trees, like she was shopping at a grocery store she didn't intend to pay for. The harassment started slow, then hit like an avalanche. It began with a certified letter on official-looking letterhead from Hollow Creek Agricultural Recovery Services, claiming I inherited a $25,000 debt for unpaid equipment leases from the previous owner. It looked terrifying: legal statutes, scary fonts, threats of immediate seizure. Most people would have panicked, written a check, or called a lawyer they couldn't afford. But in the Army, you learn that intel is everything, and bad intel gets you killed. I drove down to the county courthouse, diving into the dusty basement archives that smelled like old paper and bureaucracy. It took me 3 hours, but I found the truth. The previous owner died debt-free. There were no liens. The recovery service was a shell company registered to a P.O. box that I later linked directly to Victoria's husband, Richard St. James, a failed contractor with a history of shady dealings. While I was playing detective, Victoria was playing judge, jury, and executioner. She filed a complaint with code enforcement, claiming my farm was abandoned commercial property because I'd taken the girls to visit their grandmother for one weekend. She used photos of my empty driveway as proof. A code officer actually showed up, looking confused as hell, staring at my perfectly manicured trees. I showed him my clear deed and my business license, and he just shook his head, saying, "Buddy, this lady sent us documents that look real. You might want to watch your back. She's building a case to take your land." The breaking point was when Lily, my 16-year-old math whiz, was doing homework at a local cafe and overheard Victoria holding court. Lily texted me, her fingers probably shaking. "Dad, the HOA lady is here. She's showing people photos of our trees. She's telling them she legally acquired the Sterling Pines inventory through debt recovery. She's selling our trees right now." That text hit me harder than any IED ever did. This wasn't just harassment. This was grand theft in the planning stages. I went online and found her social media. She had a private group with 400 families, promising them premium sterling firs delivered by December 15th. She had already spent their deposits. She was $90,000 in the hole, and my trees were the only thing standing between her and a fraud conviction. She wasn't just going to steal my trees. She had to steal them to stay out of jail. She had built an entire legal fantasy: fake liens, fake seizure orders, fake court documents, to justify looting a disabled veteran's farm. I tried to warn people. I put up a website, https://www.google.com/search?Q=truesterlingpines.com, showing the truth, that we were a family farm, not a corporate asset of Oakwood Estates. I posted pictures of Ava and Lily painting signs, drinking cocoa, being happy. It worked mostly. 50 families canceled their orders with Victoria and came directly to me. That's when the war turned physical. My fences were cut. My expensive tree netting machine was sabotaged with sugar in the gas tank. Rumors started spreading on next door that my trees were diseased, infested with ticks, or that I was an unstable, violent man. She was projecting her own criminality onto me. But I didn't get angry. I got strategic. I called an old friend, Old Man Miller, a farmer 2 towns over who had survived a similar attack. He gave me one piece of advice: get eyes on everything, Caleb. This woman is going to try to rob you blind, and you need to catch her in 4K. He introduced me to Marcus Cole, a private investigator who looked like he slept in his car but had a mind like a steel trap. For $500, Marcus ran a background check on Victoria that revealed the terrifying scope of what we were dealing with. She wasn't just a Karen, she was a predator. Over the last 4 years, she had done this to 6 other farms in Georgia and South Carolina, filing fake liens, seizing crops under the guise of debt collection, and selling the inventory before the farmers could get a court date. She had stolen over $800,000 in produce and timber. And now, she was coming for Elena's legacy. Marcus looked me in the eye and said, "She's not going to stop until she takes it all. We need to let her do it. We need to let her hang herself." The plan was terrifyingly simple. We had to turn my farm into a movie set, a stage where Victoria St. James would perform her final act. Marcus brought in a surveillance expert who wired my 40 acres with 12 hidden, motion-activated cameras. These weren't your standard trail cams. These were military-grade, night vision, 4K resolution eyes that uploaded directly to the cloud. We hid them in birdhouses, hollowed-out fence posts, and deep inside the dense branches of the firs. We covered every angle of the premium section, the rows of perfectly shaped 7-footers that I knew Victoria was drooling over. We needed to capture faces, license plates, and, most importantly, the exchange of money. While we were setting the trap, Victoria was tightening the noose. It was the week before Christmas, crunch time. My suppliers started calling me, confused. The netting company, the fertilizer guy, they all told me my business partner had called to cancel orders or change delivery addresses. She was impersonating my staff. I had to scramble, paying rush fees, burning through my emergency fund just to keep the farm operational. It was psychological warfare. She wanted me broken, tired, and distracted. But Lily, my brilliant girl, found the smoking gun. She gained access to Victoria's exclusive customer Facebook group, masquerading as a new resident. The posts were chilling. Victoria was sharing photos of legal documents, fake court orders signed by a non-existent judge, assuring her anxious customers that the inventory seizure was scheduled for Friday night. She called it Operation Green Gold. She had 300 families expecting trees on Saturday morning. She was cornered. I took everything to the police, specifically to Agent Henderson, a federal officer Marcus knew who handled agricultural fraud. When I laid out the file, the fake liens, the forged signatures, the history of burned-out farms in Georgia, Henderson's face went hard as stone. "We've been chasing a ghost for 2 years," she told me. "We knew someone was running this specific lien scam across state lines, but by the time we get the report, the crops are gone, the money is laundered, and the perpetrator is in the wind. You're the first victim who figured it out before the theft." Henderson told me the FBI couldn't move on suspicion alone. They needed an active felony in progress. We had to let her steal the trees. I had to watch them cut down my daughter's future so we could put Victoria away for good. Friday came, bringing a biting frost and a sky heavy with snow. My stomach was in knots. To sell the deception, I had to play the part of the oblivious victim. I posted on social media that I was taking the girls to visit Elena's grave a few hours away and would be back late Saturday. It was the bait. Victoria took it hook, line, and sinker. Lily texted me from school. She just updated the group. Harvest teams deploying at 2,200 hours. Delivery confirmed. Dad, she's coming tonight. But then, the twist. At 4 p.m., a courier served me with an emergency injunction. A lawyer on Victoria's payroll, a slimy guy named David Sterling, no relation, thank God, had filed a motion claiming my farm was an unregulated commercial hazard and demanded all sales cease immediately pending a hearing. It was a masterstroke of evil. If I was legally barred from selling, her seizure would look like a public service, clearing out illegal inventory. It gave her a fig leaf of legitimacy if the cops showed up. Agent Henderson called me, her voice tight. "Don't panic, Caleb. The injunction doesn't authorize theft. It just stops you from selling. If she takes a single twig, it's still grand larceny. But she's trying to cover her tracks." I sent the girls to their aunt's house. I couldn't risk them seeing this, or worse, being there if things went sideways. Watching Ava pack her little overnight bag, clutching the teddy bear her mom gave her, broke me. I promised her everything would be okay, lying through my teeth. As night fell, my farm transformed into a quiet fortress. Agent Henderson had an 8-man tactical team positioned in the woods bordering the property. They were dressed in ghillie suits, invisible against the pine needles. I was holed up in my camper trailer, staring at a bank of monitors, watching the green glow of the night vision feeds. The silence was deafening. Every snap of a twig sounded like a gunshot. At 9:45 p.m., the headlights appeared. Not one truck, but a convoy. A heavy-duty flatbed, a box truck, and Victoria's white SUV leading the pack like a parade float. They cut the padlock on the back gate, felony number 1, and rolled into the south field. I watched on the screen as 6 men jumped out. I recognized Richard, her husband, directing them. They were professionals. They had high-end chainsaws, netting balers, and headlamps. This wasn't a smash and grab. It was an industrial operation. And then, another vehicle arrived. A massive transport truck from a wholesale lot 2 counties over. The buyer. She had sold my trees to a wholesaler who thought he was buying seized assets. I watched Victoria shake hands with the buyer, a guy named Pete, handing him a thick folder of forged documents. Then, she pointed to my best trees, the ones I'd marked with blue ribbons for Lily's college fund. The first chainsaw roared to life. The sound tore through the night and through my chest. I watched a beautiful 20-foot Fraser fir, one that Elena had pruned herself 3 years ago, shudder and fall. Then another. Then another. They were destroying my life, tree by tree, while I sat on my hands, waiting for the signal. Agent Henderson's voice crackled in my earpiece. Hold, Caleb. We need the transaction. We need money to change hands. Let them load the truck. It was the longest 20 minutes of my life. By 10:30 p.m., they had loaded nearly 300 trees onto the flatbed. The air was thick with exhaust and the fresh scent of pine, the smell of a crime scene. Victoria was glowing, literally beaming under the floodlights, holding a thick envelope of cash that Pete had just handed her. That envelope was the final nail in her coffin. Agent Henderson saw it too. Transaction confirmed, she whispered. All units, execute. Go, go, go. The woods exploded with light. Flashbangs detonated in the open field, disorienting the crew as 8 tactical officers swarmed from the tree line, weapons drawn. Federal agents. Drop the saws. Get on the ground. The chaos was absolute. Richard tried to run, scrambling over a pile of cut trees, but a tackle from an officer sent him face first into the mud. The hired hands dropped their tools and surrendered instantly. But Victoria? She didn't run. She stood there, clutching her envelope and her clipboard, looking more offended than terrified. I stepped out of the trailer as the police secured the scene. Agent Henderson was already cuffing Victoria, whose face had gone from smug to a shade of pale, usually reserved for ghosts. "This is a mistake," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I have a court order. These are seized assets. That man is a fraud." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "He's mentally unstable. He's a disabled vet. He doesn't know what he's doing." The silence that followed was heavy. Agent Henderson paused, slowly turned Victoria around, and leaned in close. "Ms. St. James," she said, loud enough for the cameras. And yes, the news crew from Channel 5 had just pulled up, tipped off by us earlier. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, forgery, and organized racketeering. And for the record, insulting a veteran while you rob him isn't a defense strategy. It's a character flaw." Jennifer Voss, the reporter Victoria had tried to manipulate earlier in the week, was there with a cameraman, broadcasting live. She caught the exact moment Victoria realized her life was over. The look of entitlement shattering into panic was pure cinema. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The FBI raided Victoria's home office that night, finding the printer used to forge the court orders and a ledger detailing the $800,000 she'd stolen from other farmers. Pete, the buyer, turned state's witness immediately to save his own skin, testifying that Victoria had assured him the trees were bank-owned. Richard rolled on his wife in exchange for a plea deal, admitting he knew about the fake liens. It turned out Oakwood Estates was built on a pyramid of debt, and stealing my trees was their last-ditch effort to stop the bank from foreclosing on their own mansion. Victoria was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, ordered to pay $200,000 in restitution, and banned from ever holding a position of financial trust again. Her house was seized to pay back her victims. But the best part? The trees. We recovered almost all of them. The next morning, Christmas Eve, the story went viral. The video of the raid, the interview where I stood in front of my saved farm, it touched a nerve. People saw the bullying, the theft, the disrespect. When I opened the gates on Christmas morning, I expected a few neighbors. What I got was a traffic jam 3 miles long. People drove from 3 states away to buy a justice tree from Sterling Pines. We sold out in 4 hours. The community rallied in a way I never thought possible. A local veterans group came out to help replant the saplings destroyed by the trucks. A lawyer offered pro bono services to help set up a legal defense fund for other farmers targeted by predatory HOAs. We saved the farm. Lily and Ava's college fund is fully secured, and then some. But more than the money, we got our dignity back. We proved that you can't just bully people because you think you're untouchable. I stood there that night, looking at the stump of that one beautiful 20-foot fir they had cut down. It was sad, sure, but as the snow started to fall, covering the scars on the land, I felt Elena there with me. We didn't just sell trees that year. We sold a lesson in integrity. But here's the question I want to leave you with, and it's one that keeps me up at night. Victoria truly believed she was in the right. She believed her status, her needs, and her position in the HOA gave her the moral authority to take what she wanted from someone she viewed as lesser. When does ambition cross the line into predation? And if I hadn't had the military training to fight back, if I had just been a regular guy who got scared by a legal letter, she would have won. How many Victorias are out there right now, stealing dreams with a smile and a clipboard, just waiting for a victim who doesn't know how to fight back? Let me know what you would have done in the comments. Would you have confronted her earlier, or would you have waited for the trap to spring? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the edge of the property line. I'm Caleb, and this is Sterling Pines, signing off.